Welcome back to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people where we talk about critical issues in the blindness community. I'm Aaron Richmond. Tonight, like all other episodes, is of course copywritten by me, Aaron Richmond, and Aaron's Opinion. Thank you. And this podcast can be watched right here on YouTube, where so many of you love to watch us. You can also tune in and listen on iTunes or anywhere you get a podcast. Don't forget, Aaron's Opinion 6 at gmail.com or 1240-681-9869. Comment below, follow on Facebook, Twitter, and even consider becoming a patron on my Patreon page. All right? Let's get into this one. I was just basically surfing around on Facebook in the podcast community, and I came across a podcast that I had never heard of, and now I'm glad I have heard of them, the Frank and Patsy podcast. And we are joined this evening by Patsy, wanted to join us. So welcome to Aaron's Opinion. I've heard that you talk a lot about, politics, sports, society, anything, you name it. Go ahead. Why don't you start the meet? Why don't you open it up and decide what we're going to talk about, and then we'll basically let the conversation go from there.
First of all, thank you for reaching out and inviting me on
My
to your
pleasure.
show. It's truly an honor to be on with you. I truly appreciate it.
Oh, it's an honor to have you. Yeah.
Our show is on all the big networks. It's on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch mostly. Most of our viewership comes from Twitch. We also threw it up on Periscope just to give it a shot. But we're on Wednesday through Friday, and we start at 5:30 Eastern time, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. And basically, we talk about almost all of it is the current events of that day. But that really is kind of broad. It's everything from the rioting we saw a couple days ago to the NFL playoffs going on right now. It really depends on what the day is, and basically we're just a bunch of guys who give our opinion, who try very hard to intelligently discuss some of the things that are going on, and like everybody in our community, we always look for feedback from people who are watching or listening or whatever, and interacting with our audience, and that's we get a lot of joy, and we really have a good time doing it. So that's
Yeah. And that's why, so, a little bit more about me, what I was doing. Well, my academic background is in the field of international relations. So I love talking about current events and what's going on in our very concerning world. And there's material. That's for sure.
yeah.
There's no shortage of things to say if we want to talk current events. Well, that's going to be an easy episode to record because every day is a current event. Every day is an event. And I'm 29 years old. So, with this situation, this health situation and the pandemic and all the healthcare issues today, this is basically, I've told people that, the first big thing that I've had to go through in my life. There were other issues when I was a boy, but when you're a little boy growing up, you don't think about stuff. So,
Right.
the 2020 has been the first major year where I've had a major thing to overcome. Well, what was going on with me was I was listening to podcasts for a blind audience and for the disability community. And I noticed one thing. I noticed that the podcasts I was listening to, although they were great, they weren't really approachable like you and I are. They weren't really the type of podcast where you could just come up to them and say, "Hey, I just want to come on to your show. I don't really know you, but I'm a fellow podcaster. I want to come on to your show, blah, blah, blah. Can I come on?" I always felt like they just weren't open enough. And I love educating people because I'm a teacher by trade, and I love complaining because if I can't complain, what's the point? I'm not going to stop complaining. Okay, it's just an activity for me to do. If I don't have anything to complain about, I'll figure out something to complain about. well, why don't I complain to myself and push the record button? And I discovered that by doing that, you gain an audience of people who have a lot of the same interests as you do. And I figured that out. And then things, built upwards from there. From there, iTunes, YouTube. Oh, we have Zoom. Oh, this can get all the way to YouTube. And the next thing you know, more and more people start watching it. And every episode I record, I appreciate and enjoy it more and more because I'm able to have a stronger and more greater resonance with the podcast community. So it's by far the most interesting and quite frankly one of the kindest communities I've dealt with.
Hmm.
So, that's kind of my approach on where I'm coming. So, what are some current events that you want to take a stab at that you would want my opinion about? I love giving out my opinions.
Well, I guess the let's discuss the the 400-pound gorilla in the room, uh, which was the events that we saw at the Capitol a couple days
Mhm.
ago.
Mhm.
Um, Everything that happened there, and I really don't want to uh, try to coax a one direction or another out of you. So just what is your take on this? What did you feel about it? How did it affect you?
It affected me because I was frustrated. I was frustrated because that behavior of violence and rioting does not support the United States of America. And that's the country that I support. And when you behave like that, you're kind of losing a lot of credibility. So I was very frustrated that people felt the need to misbehave like that. Not to mention rioting doesn't solve anything. It just makes people angrier. It just causes more problems. As if we didn't have problems already. So, I would really want to know intellectually, and I don't have a logical answer. What are they trying to prove? Do you really want more problems? Do you really want more violence? Do you really want more people to believe that you are, and by you I mean the rioters, that you are someone who is not really credible? Because, when you don't support the United States and you're talking about all the changes that we need to have happen, it's not really supportive of our country. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
No, it's a pretty insightful view of it. Yeah, I was incredibly frustrated myself. I watched this whole thing play out, and I saw a whole bunch of people who were pretty much incited to do things that whenever you can get somebody to play on your emotions the way they obviously were, if you saw just their actions, you saw what if you heard what they were saying while they were rioting, you saw a lot of anger, right? You heard a lot of anger, and nothing good, nothing positive that you can do societally happens from a position of anger, right? It just tears things down, it just destroys things. And to get that riled up and to cause the amount of damage, not only to the structures, to the buildings, to things like that, but this is going to be the martial artist in me coming out. The the damage and destruction you've done to your home, to your name, to your family, simply because you decided to run around like a knucklehead and start breaking windows in a Capitol building. Uh, I honestly don't know if these folks gave it a whole lot of thought beforehand, or if they're feeling any kind of remorse, or one of these things where it's like, oh my god, what did I do? I never should have done that. That type thing. Um, I don't know how that plays out in in a lot of their minds. I or if they just feel like they failed this time and they're going to try it again next time. They're going to do something else. I really don't know which way this is going to go, but that whole idea of how my thoughts, my actions, my deeds, things like that have an effect on people around me, and especially in my home and my family. I don't think that people that these folks give that a whole lot of thought, because I don't think there'd be quite as many if there were.
Yeah. Definitely not. And I think that a lot of these people, I think that some people sit around and wait for an opportunity like this. And I think that there are some people, a certain percentage of our population, who sits around and waits for an opportunity to go create a problem. And I think that there are people who just really are just bored, don't have anything else to do, and wait around for something like this to happen. It's not like they actually care. And the other thing is, it's not like they care about the issues that they're rioting about. They care about rioting about anything. So
Yeah.
it's not. I don't think they have any. I don't think they have any vested interest in what they were rioting. I think they had an interest in rioting.
You think they're
So
just angry?
I think they're just bored. They're just bored and fed up, and they just need something to do. But intellectually, do I think that they truly have a vested interest in any of the things that they were rioting about? Well, some of them maybe, but many probably not. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think there were a few people. Well, I mean, how many I don't know, but there were a few people I think who honestly believe what they were saying and honestly believed in what they were doing. Uh, I obviously they are misinformed, uh, either intentionally or not. But I think you have a large group of people, and I don't know if you remember or heard the interview of the lady who was upset that she was maced. Uh, and when the reporter asked her why she was maced, and she said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, were you not just storming the Capitol building?" And she said, "Yes, it's a revolution," but couldn't understand why she was maced.
Well,
What,
well,
you know, you're
what,
like, that's all you got.
well, yeah. Well, what do you? Well, she was lucky. That's all that happened. I've never been maced. But then again, I've never been in a riot before. Luckily,
Mm,
so I would expect to be maced. I guess. It's not something that I would want to do, so I don't have to worry about if I will be maced or not. I guess. But see, that just shows the mind, the frame of mind of the
mm,
of people like this, where they're willing to do it without truly thinking or understanding the consequences. I mean, you go up against, some of these Capitol Police or Secret Service, your life can end. So it's lucky she survived with just being maced. That's
yeah,
I've heard it's really bad. It is really unpleasant, but there are far worse. Yeah.
it is extremely unpleasant.
Yeah. Oh, so you've had it happen to you, or
Well, I'm certified, and so I have to get maced every year.
oh, thank you for your service. Well,
I'm an instructor. I'm not.
oh,
Uh,
you aren't active law enforcement.
no, I instruct
Oh,
them.
you instruct. Okay, well that's very interesting. So you instruct police how to use. That's kind of cool. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Uh, is my um niche, my what I teach is open handed
Hmm.
uh techniques, right? So, and that's almost a misnomer, because I also teach them how to use their batons and things like that. But uh, I've taught I've taught departments in 27 states in three different countries.
Oh wow. Well,
And
how did you get into that?
I have a master's certification in Hapkido, and I was during my training, during my formal training, uh, opportunities to get instructor certification uh, for police or for peace officers, whether it's police or guards or bailiffs or anything like that. A lot of those opportunities arose, and they kind of arose pretty quickly. So I decided to give it a shot and say, okay, well, I'm training anyhow, so let's see what happens. And it was purely a whim, and my wife ended up doing it with me, and it just kind of snowballed to be honest. And with now the we're in the age of COVID, obviously those opportunities to instruct are dwindled away very quickly. But yeah, it's kind of started off as almost like a hobby, and I had a school for a while, again until all this fun hit, and then we just you just get a whole bunch of guys and say, here, let me show you how to do this, and one thing kind of leads to another, and next thing you know, you're getting a phone call saying, hey, can you teach our guys? Can you come out to you know Vegas? Can you come out to Cincinnati? Can you come down to Atlanta? Can you come to these places, and can you show us what to do? And I was like, sure, I can. Here's what it's going to cost. And it just kind of went from there.
Oh, really, really fascinating. A while back on this podcast, I actually had a retired correctional officer from a prison who became blind later on in life, and we talked about his experience, sort of in law enforcement. So that it was a
Mhm.
very interesting, very, very interesting thing. So okay, so if you're talking to, let's say, Capitol Police, I would assume would be who would be actually protecting the Capitol along with Secret Service, right? I
Mhm.
guess, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So, um, so how should so if you're instructing them, how should they? What skills and what tactics are used to deal with this behavior and rioting and types of things? How does it work exactly when
It
they monitor things? Yeah.
uh whenever you're dealing with a mob, it's it's damn near impossible
Yeah.
to be honest. Okay. uh the burden of restraint is always on the officer. Okay.
And for the listeners, what do you mean by, can you define burden of restraint? I have an idea, but can you define it? What
uh
do you mean?
a person who is in a mob uh has the flexibility, and believe me when I tell you, it's not the best term to use, but I think you'll get my point. um to use any tactic that they feel necessary to do. In other words, if they just wanted to run up and stab you in the throat, that's what they're going to do. Okay. uh an officer does not have that same discretion. An officer is required to meet force with equal force.
Mm,
Okay, so in other words, somebody comes at them yelling and screaming, they can't pull out their gun and shoot them.
understood. Right.
Okay.
Right.
uh when somebody comes at them with a knife or a bat or whatever, there's a legitimate fear for their own lives, then yes, they are permitted to use their weapons, and we've seen it time and time and time again. um so the idea of these rioters, these people who are breaking the law, who are being very aggressive, who are being very violent, uh, in a lot of ways, the officers are still responsible for their protection as well as their own, and it's a pretty big burden that some of these guys have to deal with. And I'm not saying that there aren't mistakes made, but whenever you have a riot and a mob situation, uh, the amount of training that you have, or the amount of discretion that you have, or the amount of available courses of action are extremely limited, and you wind up in a very, very big disadvantage. The only thing that they can really have on their side is at any given point to have a superior number. That's really about it. If there's more people in that mob than you have officers, the officers are going to lose, unless they decide to just start whipping out weapons and shooting people, which obviously they're not going to do. But
Right,
that's
right,
it.
sure, 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 sure. Yeah, it's very interesting without a doubt. So, in that case, who were the officers outnumbered, or were the
Yes,
protests? Oh, okay. Oh, the
yes.
officers were outnumbered. Okay. Well,
It
that's what I
incredibly
thought.
outnumbered. Yeah.
Incredibly. Well, that would be my, on one hand, that would be my logical assumption, people wouldn't be, well, then again, the whole thing is illogical, so I can't start it by saying my logical assumption. That's not accurate. My illogical conclusion to this would be, if you're a rioter, illogically you shouldn't riot if you think you're going to be outnumbered by law enforcement. But then if you're a rioter, you don't care about things. So
Right. Yeah. The rational thought goes out the window.
yeah, it
Yeah.
does. It does,
It's
because
just mob
and
mentality
and
at that
just
point.
and just you explaining to me how the training works shows me why the entire situation was illogical and not a rational way of thinking. Yeah.
It's very, very, yeah. It's a very good analogy. Very good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's craziness. That's just crazy. So basically what you're telling me is the only thing a police officer can do in that situation is just pray. Base.
Yeah. I mean, it, they're more than well enough equipped to handle a one-on-one
Hmm.
uh situation, sometimes even a two-on-one,
Right.
sometimes depending. I mean, there's always that, there's the answer is always, well, it depends, right? But
That's the problem. There's no. This is exactly the confusion, I think, that a lot of, well, no, I mean, children do not. I restrict my audience to adults only. So this is,
Mhm.
an explicit adults only podcast. But I will tell you, my opinion is, I think that children and younger teenagers, people 10 years younger than me, um, don't have a hard time understanding law enforcement for this very reason, because there are so many different variables. It all depends. It all depends on the situation. To me that makes sense, but to a younger person it doesn't. So it makes sense where we have this huge problem. Now, when this riot began, I'm guessing the Capitol Police knew that they were going to come, right? Or
I Yeah, because I mean,
yeah.
they knew it for a couple of days, right? Well, they knew they were going to have this march for a couple of days because you have to get permits and there were stages built and everything, right? So it was
Hmm.
kind of hard to miss it. Uh, I I I I'm not exactly sure. There is some talk and it's all conspiracy theory, so I really don't want to bring any light to it. But I'm not exactly sure that they were prepared for the total number of people that they were going to have to deal with. And I think that there were a whole lot of people who were hoping that it was just a march and they would go from point A to point B, and then that would be the end of it. Uh, Obviously, it didn't go the way they were hoping.
Right, right. Now, I certainly don't have a problem, with in my opinion, a peaceful march. A peaceful march and a respectful march is completely different than what we saw. I don't know. I think they're
Yes,
two totally different things.
they
Okay.
are.
If
Right.
they Okay, good. So if you want to be respectful and peaceful and support our country and march about an issue that you know about and believe in, I still don't think that's really. I still personally, I don't think that actually helps anything. But you can do it. But I think also what happened was, I think all these other, these crazy violent people who were waiting around to be crazy and violent showed up and either turned it violent with the intent of being violent the entire time, or in the end, if it erupted into violence. It's hard to say which came first. Did they truly come with the intent of just creating a mess, or did they show up and say, well, we're a little bit crazier, we're going to try to push some buttons and see how far it goes? I don't know. What's your sense of that, if they truly intended for this to be this out of hand?
I think there were a number of people who absolutely wanted the violence and the chaos.
Yeah.
Um, I think that the speeches and the egging on that the president and his son and Giuliani did helped encourage that aggressiveness. Uh, they definitely stoked the flames. Uh, it should not have it should not have come to this, but whenever you hear the speeches that these folks gave, whenever you look at the body language again, the we keep going back to, uh, it was inevitable. And I'm half convinced that there were people up on that stage giving those speeches that that's what they wanted to see. I truly believe that they wanted to see this.
Yeah. So maybe I don't know. Are you saying that maybe some people in the administration maybe were kind of frustrated and needing to blow off some steam? In other
I
words,
I I think you had somebody, you had a president who didn't want to accept the fact that he lost an election and blamed everybody else other than the fact that he just wasn't the one that was picked to win.
right.
And
Although I do understand what you're saying. Although all of that put together puts him in danger, his family in danger, and the rest of the capital and anyone who works in that area in danger. So
mhm,
he can be frustrated, but why he would want to stress himself out, I don't know. I thought he was like in his 70s.
he
You
is.
know, why he would want to cause himself that extra stress and
Yeah,
stress out the Secret Service that are around him. Uh, maybe possibly, but I don't know enough to share the opinion. I see the opinion, but I don't know enough to share it. Who knows? It's kind of beside the to me. It's kind of beside the point because what happened shouldn't have, and it shouldn't have become such a mess.
no, it shouldn't have. But there's an argument to be made that the only way that you have a chance of things like this not repeating themselves is to find out what the root cause of it was.
Well, sure. Yeah,
So
without doubt, with politics, everything happens behind closed doors. We'll never know.
not
Um,
truly, no, no. We
we'll never get to the bottom of it. Same thing, same thing with the pandemic and all of the that whole health situation. There are people who don't believe in it. There are people who believe all sorts of conspiracies.
mhm.
And let me tell you, I know you haven't listened to a lot of my content. You might not have been on my channel for a while, but I'm a pretty strange guy. There's a lot of silly stuff I believe, but some of the silly stuff that people are coming up with, I can't. I am I emotionally, intellectually, and philosophically can't even begin to understand it. Some of these conspiracies that people are coming up with are really, really, really scary. And and for the listeners, you really have to be careful not to believe in conspiracies. There was an episode I recorded about a week ago. I forget when I recorded because I record so much, but I recorded an episode called Tea Time, where I interviewed this reporter who I was listening to Deep Cuts podcast, and they were
Uh-huh.
talking about the Phantom Patriot. And I said to myself, that episode is really strange. That's really strange. That's some weird stuff. Well, I was, perusing their group, and I found the author who wrote the book, who was interviewed, and not thinking of it, I reached out to him. Hey, I'm Aaron Richmond from Aaron's Opinion. Can I interview you on my podcast? Mainly I just wanted to learn more about it. Well, it's a very strange story. Well, in moral of the story, if you believe in these conspiracies enough, you know in that story, the guy finds himself at the Bohemian Grove and shoots it up, and then goes to prison and FBI, and in the end, tragically, 2 years ago, takes his own life. So guys, be careful what conspiracies you believe, because all of them are dangerous, and all of them are crazy, and I don't believe in as many of them as I used to. Yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
the thing about conspiracies is you latch onto it and you hold on to it because you make a connection to it.
Yeah, you have a vested interest in the idea. Of course,
Yeah.
it's easier to maintain the belief than it is to lose the belief. If you
Yes.
believe in it long enough, it's true.
Yeah.
But there have been some very what have been some other interesting conspiracies that you've seen on your side of the podcast, on your channel? There's a lot of them.
Oh, there's a bunch. Uh, there, the idea of this strain of COVID, was created in a lab someplace, and it was intentional, and it just goes on and on and on down the line about some of these things. Uh, you I guess that the Chinese government is was working on some nerve thing or whatever it was, someplace in Wuhan in some lab is easier for some people to get their heads around than what this is what happens whenever you have open markets someplace that aren't controlled.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the idea of that random something that random happening, people can't put their heads around, so it's
Right.
easier to believe that it was nefarious than it was just you know that's how it goes, that type thing.
Without doubt. And I think it was still that episode, or maybe it was someone else who I was talking to about this very issue, that people, or might have been a student actually, and the lesson here is that people will always believe the easier story. So
Hmm.
whatever's easier for them to believe, if it's the easy way out, they'll believe it. I
Yeah.
was speaking with a student from Taiwan at one point, and she was very, very, very awfully against mainland China. And we came to the part of the discussion about, the truth behind the virus. And, I shared, some of my opinion. And then, I said, in the end, we'll never get to the bottom of it. But then I asked the question, I said, so whether it was done intentionally or not, whether it was came from the bat in the market or not, what do you think? What do you think the truth is? And her answer was very good. Her answer was, it doesn't really matter what the truth of it is. What matters is that this situation demonstrates gross neglect. The situation was grossly neglectful and should never have happened, no matter what the story is. So, I have some pretty harsh opinions about it, but overall, it's grossly neglectful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great a great way to look at it. The how it began is almost immaterial. It was the fact that or I should say where it began is immaterial. How it began is the more important issue. uh and you're right, it was at some point, somebody was very neglectful, and maybe it did happen in a lab, and somebody was just was not on their game that day, and I'll just say something stupid like left the window open or whatever it is, and it fell out. I'm just making it up. I don't know.
Right, right.
You know
And
what I'm
I
saying? Just
yes,
something
yes.
as
And I
innocent as that.
explained and I explained to her. I said we have incredibly secretive facilities in our country. I do know for a fact that I do not work, and I have never worked in this industry, but I know that we have things that are dangerous, like this particular
Hmm.
virus.
Oh,
And
sure we do.
I also know that we keep those things safe. We keep those things locked up
Right.
to make sure they don't get out. So that really plays out, and that really demonstrates the gross neglect that we've seen in this entire situation. So, the other conspiracies, I'm not I'm not terribly receptive to them, but I've heard everything as outlandish as that the so many different versions of it. Something about like that Microsoft created the vaccine so they can pump microchips into
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, but don't let's not laugh too hard, because there are people in Soviet Union, former Soviet bloc, who do believe that. So
Hmm.
I've met people who will tell you that that's the point of that's exactly the point. And those same very people, by the way, will tell you that astronauts are not real and that we've never left the Earth's atmosphere. I've heard that one a lot too. That we've never walked on the moon. You'd be
Yeah.
surprised. A lot of people don't believe it. But the fact is we're all dealing with what all of these different incidents that have been happening lately revolve around, is basically people not thinking, basically people being neglectful in their thoughts, in their philosophy, or in their practices. And I think it really sets the wrong message for younger teenagers and younger people who are needing to come of age in this crisis. So that's really where it gets scary.
Yeah. Yeah. And the kids kids are amazing. And I think a lot of it depends on their age, because I look at really young children, uh, up to first, second, third grade. and they're wearing their mask, and they're doing their thing, and they're lifting their hair up whenever they so somebody can take their temperature. And it's hard for me to do that, but um and they're very resilient, right? They don't blink an eye. It's that's what we do. Okay, that's everyday life. And then you have some kids that are older, um who still you know resist putting the masks on, uh the distance learning and things like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um so and then when you get to adulthood, it's a crapshoot. We're so by this time we're so locked in our ways that anything deviating from our norm sets us off. But kids are something else, and I think that the younger kids are in a lot of ways, probably because just of sheer innocence, are probably far more better equipped to handle this change in our society than probably anybody else is.
Without doubt, without doubt. And those are the, and and I do hope, for many very many reasons, I happen to be living with my parents and brother, as many people my age are. Certainly,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people in the disability community live with their family. Um, my brother's 23, um, 23, 24, and so I don't see, we don't have any like children, running
Mm-hmm.
around, running around. But if there were, I would say, well, thank God they're so little and so young, because hopefully they'll survive this and then forget about it and not even really know that it happened. Whereas someone my age understands all of it, and it's a lot more stressful, when you understand everything, So it's kind of it's kind of good to, I guess it would be kind of good to be a little kid in this time period. Maybe, right? Who
Well,
knows?
I think that they it's gonna. I almost want to say, and I may sound a little stupid saying it, but I seemed like out of everybody, the younger ones are going to be the ones least impacted, because they don't have they don't have that comfort. That their comfort zone isn't as big as, like, as you get older, your comfort zone goes big. You have a small child. It's I take my bath at whatever, I eat at whatever, I go to bed, I wake. And it's just simple, basic things like that. So putting a mask on or doing these things really doesn't affect them at all. Being restricted as to so many people in a room really doesn't mean anything to them, right? Because when are they going to be in a room of 100 people in a bar, right? It's not going to happen. So those things really don't bother them too much,
Right.
if at all, right? So they're definitely more equipped to. And whenever we go back to normal, or whatever our normal is going to
Well,
be,
we're entering a new normal, I think.
yeah. Well, I mean, let's face it. Eventually, our gathering sizes are going to start to increase. Our a lot of the restrictions that we have are going to start to crumble away. Now, will they totally go away? I don't think so, but you're going to start to see them relaxed a little bit. Uh, and the kids are just going to look at it like, oh, okay, big deal. It's not really going to affect them a whole lot. uh Adults, and down to maybe middle school, maybe a little bit younger,
Hmm.
those are the kids that's where the effect you're going to see.
Right. Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. All right. All right. Well, I think we got the philosophy covered. What are some other issues, that you like to talk about, on your podcast? Or what are some other really interesting topics that you have had, a good response from on your podcast, I guess.
uh Believe it or not,
I
we
believe it.
we we get a lot of responses, and we get a lot of conversation in our chat whenever we talk about things that people have an emotional interest in. And you're gonna sit there and you go, yeah, no shit. But uh, most people, if we talk about something like the NFL, week 15 or week 6. We don't get too many responses. We talk about uh, European soccer, and our chat explodes. Okay, uh, week whatever in the NFL would never. We're here in Western PA, so like everybody around here are big Steelers fans, right? Uh, we'll get a couple of comments about, well, they blew this one, or boy, they're winning the Super Bowl, because it's around here, it's either one or the other. Uh, but you talk about the you know Manchester United West Ham game, and it's almost a meaningless game on the table, and people lose their minds, right? They just go crazy over tactics, and what was so and so thinking, and why didn't they have this lineup, and why did they, and it just scrolls and scrolls and scrolls and scrolls, and you're just sitting there and you're thinking, well, we got a winner today. We're going to get a whole lot of people talking today.
Yeah.
uh, it and if it's a big game, if it's a big derby game, United, Liverpool, El Clasico, something like that, uh boy, it just, and our show could go on forever, and we never get to a lot of the topics that we want to talk about, because we would try to if there was a big game or a big match or whatever it is, we would try to lead with that and then get into everything else that happened during the day. And there were times that we wouldn't even get a chance to talk about anything else. So things that people are passionate about, and that doesn't necessarily mean on the negative side, right? uh like social media platforms, right? The only time it's really bustling and moving is whenever people are angry about something. uh Whenever you look at something that people get very excited about, in a positive way, they become, as talkative and is moving again. But that's very specific to, the time that we're on the air, the time that we're doing these things. It's not a general thing. uh so it really, really, really depends on what's happening in the world. The good part is that pretty much since we started, we've never had a boring day. There's always been something that got people going. uh the biggest problem that we have had is, we would take a day, we'll start in the morning, and we'll get on our Discord group, and we'll just start throwing stories back and forth at each other, and ideas back and forth at each other. And then whenever we get everything set up and we're getting ready to go live, because we do everything live, uh something happens 10 minutes before we start, or 20 minutes before we start, right? And everything we have planned for that day goes out the window. So now we have to ad lib everything, because we have no time to prep. And this happens almost constantly. You think by now we would know better, but whenever we get onto something that people really, really, really have an interest in, an emotional interest in, not a curiosity or anything like that, uh, things go off, things happen. And believe it or not, we get a whole lot of responses whenever we start talking about local things. Like, local Lou lives about 4 miles away from me in one direction. Frank lives about 4 miles away from me in the other direction. Uh, and whenever we start talking about things that affect us, our little area, we're most of the people watching our show, or listening in, really have don't even know where this place is. Boy, they start throwing things at us, like, yeah, the same thing happens in my neighborhood, or the same thing happened in, down the street from me, or my aunt does this, what happened to my brother, or whatever it is. And that brings a lot of people really close to us, and really gets people moving, and gets people talking about things. So sometimes it's not really as big as the riots. It could be something as small as, the you look across the street from my house right now, you'll see somebody with 15 Trump signs, he's still in his front yard. Okay, I'm telling you, you can count them. There's 15 of them. They're lined up, right? campaign signs, literally right across the street from me. And you throw that on you and I said, Lou, whenever you went home today, did you go past my house? Did you see the knucklehead across the street from me? And he'll just lose his mind, right? It's like, then, we're getting all these people talking about, I got a cousin that does the same thing, and and it just keeps going back and forth. So it could be something as simple as that. I don't know if it's the day or if we just catch people in the right mood sometimes or what it is, but
I think it's the time period. I think people are fed up, and people are receptive and willing to learn from us podcasters, I think is what it's about. And I think people are in the mood to listen to new information. So anything new that you can give someone, that's something that they will absorb, I think, more than ever, because people are stuck at home. They're too afraid, to go outside or whatever it might be. So they're more likely to listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube, about these types of things.
I got a question for you.
Of course, go right ahead. I
And
got an answer.
it just came to my mind. I'm 52.
Yeah.
Okay. So my consumption of news or whatnot is far different than yours. I have a son who's 20 years old. Okay. So and the way he consumes and the way he gets information and the way he processes news and everything is far different than the way I do. How much actual television do you watch or do you interact with, as
Very
opposed to Twitter, YouTube, TikTok? Just go on down the line.
Well, TikTok I don't watch.
Well, you know what I mean, things like that.
Yes. TV, I'll only watch TV if it's the show that I like, and most shows I don't like. So there's only like a couple good things to watch, either on I don't know what it's called, either the regular TV side or the Netflix. So there's only like, if I'm looking through the list, there's only like one thing that's worth watching. Yeah. So I don't spend I don't spend a lot of time on the TV. I think I will tell you that I've noticed that more and more people my age are switching to, let's listen to a podcast. Let's listen to iTunes, what they're doing there. So my advice then is stick to podcasting, because this is apparently the form of media that people are receiving. YouTube and things like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah. I'm real curious where that divide happens. Where
I think it's about the time period. I think the times have changed in our society. So the way that people interpret media and interpret information has changed. So then people are more willing to sit down and listen to something and listen to new information. I think the action of listening to information to some makes it more believable, because they're actually listening and not seeing it. I think that's a lot of it.
Do you think that a lot of it? I always said that a big reason that, let's say, traditional TV, okay, that the way we can it's easier to separate. Traditional TV takes too long. Okay, in other words, if I want to watch the news, and I can remember being a kid, my parents would have the 6 o'clock news on, right? The local news, the 6 o'clock news. Then would go to the national news at 6:30. This was back in the days, like whenever cable television was pretty young, but the dynamic's the same. And that's how it was either the news, the local news at 6 o'clock in the newspaper, and that was it. Okay, and your 6 o'clock, they would sit there for half an hour or maybe an hour if they wanted to watch a national thing, and that's what they did for that hour. Okay, whenever we had these riots going on a couple days ago, my son had the Manchester United game on. He's watching a soccer match and he's following the riots on Twitter. Okay. And I said, came in the house and I said, did you see what's going on at the Capitol? He said, yeah, I'm following it on Twitter. It was the idea of this, of a broadcast, NBC, CBS, whatever it is, CNN, sitting down and watching that was totally foreign to him. It never even crossed his mind. He would just rather pick up his phone, look on Twitter, and see what's going on. It was direct. It was quick. There's no spin. There's no hype. It's just, this is somebody there. This is what they're showing me, and boom, there it is. And I thought, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And that's going to hurt a lot of these things. I think I'm kind of getting off on a tangent a little bit, and I apologize. But
Not at all. No,
uh,
no, you're no. You're it's really that's really good information, and it's really valuable to me because it shows it's exactly what I'm saying. The way that my generation or your son's interprets information is different. So what they consider gathering information, it's all the same. Whether you're watching the news or looking at it on Twitter, you're still you're still gathering the knowledge. It's just we just kind of eat it and kind of consume it in a different context. But it's all the same story.
it,
Probably on Twitter too, they added in videos, so he could still physically watch videos.
it just seems like the way he's doing it, and, the way you're doing it, is just seems to be far more efficient.
It depends on what you believe. If you believe that if you believe in conspiracies and that that vaccines have microchips in them, I don't know. You probably shouldn't be following that tweet. It depends on what you're following, right?
Granted, absolutely, but
So, yeah,
if you're looking to source information,
yeah,
boy, it's right there for you. Now, whether you might be sourcing garbage information, but there's not a whole
yeah.
lot I can
And
do about that, right? It's
well,
just, if you want it, boom, it's right there, and
that's so okay. So the takeaway here is that it's valuable that we're able to access what we believe to be the facts so quickly. Yes.
yeah, and the fact that my generation, what your main source is, my generation still seems to look at as a fallback or a secondary source. Okay, in other words, most folks in my generation will watch, we'll say, CNN, and whoever the personality is on CNN will say something like, uh, they're reporting on Twitter, yada 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 yada. So then, like, my entire generation grabs their phones or probably their laptops or whatever it is, and goes to Twitter and tries to find this thing. Where, like, my son will tell me, did those knuckleheads on CNN say anything about this yet? And you look at it and you go, nope, didn't see it yet. And then, like, an hour and a half later, they mention it. And what is secondary to people who are more than willing to sit there and watch TV, uh, is primary to people who don't have any care in the world for television. And
Yeah.
it's a very interesting dynamic.
It truly is fascinating. Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. Well, where could someone well actually what are some other I have one great question for you, but what are some other questions you have for me personally?
Uh, Whenever you started out, what was the hardest part for you? Podcasting.
Yeah, probably maintaining it, probably continue having enough motivation to continue doing it. And now that now it's starting to pay off where I'm able to easily, with relative ease get guests to come in here like you and so many others who are really appreciative of the content. See, when people start appreciating the content, then it starts to become a lot easier to produce. So
Do you ever have a problem getting, or just trying to getting content and figure out what I mean, talking early whenever you first started?
yeah, but what I would do is I would go to various Facebook groups for blind people, and they would ask a lot of questions about, do I go to a big university or a small university? How do I deal with this issue, that issue? And then I would just take the question. I would say, so today I would be talking to myself, and I would say, today we're going to talk about this issue. Person out there in the audience, you want to know ABC. Here's my opinion. So kind of basing it off of other people's questions, it's a lot easier to come up with things to say. So that's my advice about that, and that's how I handled that. Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Uh, our biggest problem isn't uh, um, what we're going to talk about, or we're trying to get a subject or a theme or whatever for whichever day. Any kind of information, or even motivation isn't a problem. If you're doing anything like we do, boy, this stuff is just there for you. uh our biggest problem, and seems to be, we have a tendency to kind of stray off topic, and you saw it with me tonight again, right? uh that seems to be the thing that is the hardest part for us. I think
And
we get on
that's what
tangent.
makes it a great getting on tangents. That's the whole point. So it makes it a great show. You're supposed to get on a tangent and kind of forget where you're going, and then try to walk, get back onto the road and get back to the path, I guess.
Boy, we do that in spades, man. So go ahead, hit me with your question.
Okay, fine. So I'm sure you want to ask me one question to really make me sweat, to really see if I'm worth my salt. So what question? You only have one. What
Oh,
question do you really want to know about me?
oh boy. You know what? Uh, why the one question that I guess would be the I I I I wonder, do you have a goal for this show? Or is it just something where you're doing and it's just going to be here and you're just going to continue to do it? Or is this a is do you want this to lead to something else?
Oh, I want it to lead to me helping people and educating people and helping people to have a better day just by listening to a great podcast.
So that's you. Do you have any? You don't have any selfish goals, for lack of a better term,
Well, all goals in
or
essence
selfish? Yes, I.
would be selfish, right?
Yes.
So any goal that we have is selfish, but my selfish goal is to be selfish and to help and to educate people and to help people and to create a podcast where you can come, other blind people can come, other people. I've had people all over the world come onto this podcast. Trust me when I tell you, you haven't seen the last of me, and you won't be able to lose me now, because you're going to get added to a lot of stuff. You're going to get added to some WhatsApp group and some all that secret stuff where we talk about conspiracies or something like that. So you'll be able to meet all of my guests from all over the world and really see how they live their lives. We've had everyone from, as I said, well, you were talking about the Mace thing earlier, but we've had everything from retired correctional officers. Um, he didn't end up joining the WhatsApp group. So why am I telling you that? I don't know. Everyone from other broadcasters all over the world, other podcasters, just a long list of characters from here, in North America, people as far as Uganda, New Zealand. And my WhatsApp group is the most open one because I'm the admin. So you can come on over after we're done with this recording. I'll show you. Come on over, send over a voice message if you want, and it's definitely the nicest group on WhatsApp to connect with my guests, and other people who've helped me with the podcast.
I will
So
do that. I thank you very much for the invite. Yes.
my pleasure, my pleasure. But of course, if people want to tune in to Frank and Patsy, how would they go about doing that? You can give yourself a plug if you want, of
Oh,
course.
thank you.
Well,
Are
what's
we?
well, what's the point without you giving a plug? Why would you come here, right?
I was being polite. You can find us on Facebook at the Frank and Patsy podcast. Uh, on on Twitch at my channel's name's Master Patsy. Also on YouTube, Master Patsy. Um, you can
I
follow
tell
me
you
on.
what link do here? I tell you what link do you want them to click on in the description? Because I can
Actually,
I can put it.
the Twitch one. Yeah,
Okay, if you give me the Twitch, did you give me the Twitch?
that's
I
that's
think
the
you.
one I sent you earlier. Yeah.
Okay. So guys, just click that link, and then you'll know all about that. I never got into Twitch, and I never got into Discord. because I don't do the gaming. So it's more for that. But I'm glad you're using that for podcasting. That's
It
useful, I guess.
it is it's a very good platform. They actually have a talk show section and a just chatting section.
Hmm.
So it's not always gaming. So it's you know it's actually pretty good. A lot of the better conversations we've had on our chat has been through Twitch.
Awesome. Awesome. That's all the questions I have. As I say, this has been another excellent episode. Thanks for coming. Glad you guys enjoyed it. Please comment below. We really covered a lot tonight. I wish you guys would comment below on YouTube. All of you are too shy. I don't know why. But Aaron's opinion 6 at gmail.com. If you want to email in, you can also send in a nasty voicemail or text message, or you might even send in a nice one. That would be kind of strange. One two
You
four
definitely would.
zero 1-240-681-9869. 1-240-681-9869. Patsy, I wish you the very best of health. I wish everybody the best of health. And until next time, we have a very special way that we end my podcast here on Aaron's Opinion by me saying, thanks so much, everybody. Take care and help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow.